This is Geek Gab, the Geekalicious Gab Fest for Sunday, January 4th, 2015. You thought I'd mess that up, didn't you? I am your host, Daddy Warpig, with my valiant co-hosts, Dorrinal and RemipunX, and our special guest, Indie Dev Pixel Metal. We are back! That's right! The Geek Gab broadcasting, as always, from a secret bunker deep underneath the House of Geekery. You can catch me, your host, online at the House of Geekery, daddywarpig.com, daddywarpig.com, or you can follow me on Twitter at daddy_warpig, at daddy_warpig. You can also follow my co-hosts, RemipunX, Dorrinal, and our special guest, Pixel Metal, all of us on Twitter. The links are below the video. RemipunX just started doing some Let's Play videos on Hitbox. Links to that are also in the description. I'm telling you, folks, that description is chock full of more awesome than you can handle without the aid of prescription medication. I'm going to pause for a second and let my co-hosts and our special guest say hi. Remy, did you get what it was you were going for? Oh, she's not there yet. Dorrinal, you're going to have to step in. Sorry, man.
Hey, everybody. Happy New Year. It's good to be back with the Gab.
And until Remy gets back, we'll jump to Pixel Metal. Say hi.
Hey, what's going on, guys?
You are... I was looking at your Twitter account earlier because I didn't know if you had a company website or something so I could put it in the links. You are working on a game called Sombrero.
That's right.
Other than evoking a sort of south of the border, south of the Rio Grande feel, which I'm going to go out on a limb and guess was deliberate, there isn't a lot of details that I could immediately see in the fully 30 to 40 seconds of research I put into looking at your Twitter account. That's the kind of in-depth research I like to do around here, toiling endlessly to make sure that you, the audience, have the facts you need, fully 30 to 40 seconds. But what's the deal with Sombrero? What kind of game is it? Because I have no idea.
Wow. Well, I appreciate you doing that 30 to 40 seconds more research than the most people who talk about games would do. That's cool. Sombrero is a 2 to 4 player competitive multiplayer sort of platformer. It's like I said, it's sort of southwestern themed. It's sort of a spaghetti western kind of thing going on. And you fight against other people. It's sort of a couch multiplayer game. And yeah, that's it really. I don't have my sales pitch ready. It's fun. People seem to like it. You should check out the video if you go to the website at pixelmetal.com. There's a video up there of some of the gameplay that might help clear some things up for people. A few people that have played it at some of the playtests and stuff, I've taken it around to in New York and in Boston and hopefully Austin soon. I want to try and get in something down there. Have compared it sort of like a Tower Fall, but it's much faster paced than a Tower Fall, or I should say Tower Fall is. It's a different theme, obviously. And I've had some people say it's a bit like Smash Brothers because it can get kind of hectic, especially with 4 players. And I like that. That sounds good. That's a comparison
That was my initial impression, actually. I saw part of the video and it felt very Smash to me, at least just from a quick view.
Yeah, I mean it's fast. It's kind of chaotic, especially with 4 players on some of the stages. Where, the bullets you shoot at each other can sort of bounce off other things, and so you end up with these sort of pinball table of bullets going around, which can be kind of interesting to try and avoid. It can get a little bullet helly. I should probably work on tweaking that a bit more. It's a little too much for some people, but I think I like the idea of putting in some kind of slider better. Like something that players could actually change themselves to sort of adjust the difficulty that way. Like how fast people
every
can shoot
detail
or
all the
something.
way up to all the way down from I can see every detail up to don't show me nothing because
Yeah, I feel like that's fun, right? And like as a developer, even as a sole developer, doing stuff like that's it's not especially hard to do. It's really just kind of building a menu, and like building menus for games really does kind of suck. Just laying them out, and the development tools aren't really meant for putting menus together. They're meant for putting graphics on screen, and so it can be a bit irritating, and it's pretty time consuming. But it's like it's already all that information's already being tweaked by a number somewhere. So let people tweak the number themselves and figure out how they want to tune it so it works for them, or so how they can find new ways to play the game that maybe we didn't think of as a developer.
so you just need to expose the variable in the GUI.
That's it. I mean, that's literally it. That's pretty much how every game I've ever seen works. There's a number somewhere, and it's set at something, and you can let people change it, or you cannot. So putting in that maybe an extra week or two of work to build a half decent menu, so those crazy OCD people who want to go in and tweak every single little thing can do that. It doesn't feel like that big of a deal, really, if it's going to add that much value for people who want to play with that kind of stuff.
Or you can leave it in the hardcore nerd mode, which is where people actually have to physically go into a .ini file somewhere and add a line or edit a line in text edit to get it to do the right thing. Or if you're on the Mac, you can use the space defaults com.pixelmetal .www space some value. That's just all kinds of geeky stuff that gamers to pick up that filthy casuals just don't.
Exactly. And I mean all that stuff is already in my case it's all stored in XML files outside of the game anyway. So like that's how people could add their own stages in if they wanted to. So all the stages, I built all the stages using this open source map editing software called Tiled, and it's at mapeditor.org. And so I just natively support that format, and that's the format all the game stages that the game will be coming out with are stored in. So if someone wanted to add their own stage, it wouldn't be especially difficult. They just have to learn this level editor and copy some files to the right places and edit a few XML files for these super nerds. For desktop stuff that's easy, or desktop laptop I should say. And but I'm trying to get it onto at least 1 or 2 consoles too. In the end, I mean, I don't think on initial release. Initial release will be OS X, Windows and Linux. Most likely, and but after that, I mean, they're not the systems as consoles aren't especially different from computers these days. So it's just a matter of hopefully tweaking for performance and moving a few things around, and it wouldn't be too much effort to get it up and running on a few of these consoles.
So are you designing it to use controllers on the PC? If it's a hot seat multiplayer, you're going to have a couple people playing. That seems like it would be hard to do on the same keyboard.
Yeah. I think in the end, there will be the ability for one person to play on the keyboard. Because I've had that request a few times from some of the people I've sent it out to for testing. But then if you want more than one player, you would have to have some gamepads. I think even 2 people on a single keyboard seems a little a little tough. Especially since you can aim in any direction with the right analog stick on a gamepad.
Yeah.
That would be hard to emulate on a keyboard and a mouse with more than one person. Anyway,
I think that depends on how much of a '90s shareware feel you want for the game. How many people you can
Yeah, I guess I could try and pull like a One Must Fall to directly reference some of that '90s shareware
Wow.
we're talking about,
I remember that one.
and try to fit 2 players on a single keyboard, which I think they did in that, and
Yeah, they did.
I mean, it worked. I don't know how well it worked, but it worked.
It works. Yes, technically it worked.
Yeah. That what we did most of the time. Because that actually came out when I was interning at a video game company in New Jersey, long time ago, and we had a bunch of game pads already in the office because we were actually in the middle of making a fighting game, oddly enough, and so we were playing that with those fancy advanced Gravis game pads. Remember Gravis, Gravis Ultrasound and all that stuff. So I got to play it more that way, but at home, I was not quite as fancy, and I had to play 2-player on a keyboard, and that was a big downgrade from playing on a gamepad for a fighting game.
It's actually pretty brain warping to try to do the fireball quarter circle forward on the keyboard. That's something.
Oh yeah. Your timing needs to be perfect. It's like hold down S for a little bit, and then hold down S and D, and then hold down just D. It's like no, this isn't gonna work. It's like 5 keystrokes just to get a quarter turn. It's nuts.
Yeah, you just got to learn to roll your fingers. It teaches you very important keyboard rolling skills.
That's true. That's a good point. I don't know in what other situations other than video games that would be useful, but it could be. It could be. It's possible, I guess. It'd be a strange way to type. It just look like you're just sort of running your hands across your keyboard randomly.
I'm looking at our chat, and all the questions that were being asked are basically just random questions, other than the one they asked that was on topic, which was how many developers do you have? But you already answered that. There's just you.
Yeah. On currently, I should add that little caveat in there. It's just me working on Sombrero, doing all the development and all the artwork. And some of the sound effects. Some of them are library sound effects too, because going for that sort of old Hanna-Barbera-ish cartoony look, it made sense just to get those same sound effects basically to use for things to really sort of drive the point home. And they that library is actually available for a pretty reasonable price these days. That Hanna-Barbera library. And I do have a musician who's doing all of the totally completely awesome orchestral music for it, who's really nailing home that Once Upon a Time in the West, Good and the Bad, the Ugly kind of vibe.
So how long has the game been in development?
It's been about a year, maybe a little bit more than a year. I'm trying to remember. I think I started on it in November of 2013, and then I started showing it in January of this year. Or not this year anymore, geez. In January of 2014, just to get some kind of response, and it's probably the first time I had to be in front of a crowd like that, showing off a game for the first time in any setting, really. And then I've been working on it this past year. So I was hoping to have it ready January, February. I think we're probably looking closer to March or April at this point. I want to add in a few, getting feedback from people. I want to add in a few more features, like that GUI menu we were talking about to tweak some of those variables. And I'm trying to get in NetPlay before the initial release, but I'm not sure that's gonna happen. That turns out that's really hard to get solid internet multiplayer that's responsive enough for a sort of Twitch platformer. To get that working is kind of a big task, a bigger task than I thought it was going to be.
Do you have is it set up for LAN play right now?
No, that actually would work the same as the NetPlay would, the way I'm doing a thing. The game is mostly done with JavaScript, and it all works through Node WebKit, which is think of it as a standalone browser that acts as an executable. It's I don't know a better way to describe that. I'm sure there is. But so basically, using web technology, I can use what's called WebRTC, which is web real-time communication, to send data back and forth between stuff. So WebRTC doesn't care if it's LAN or if it's internet. It just puts the connections together, and then after that, it sort of acts like a peer-to-peer BitTorrent kind of system. So it doesn't need a central server, so there wouldn't be any issues with Call of Duty servers getting shut down, or the Halo 2 servers getting shut down, even though people should probably move on to the new games at this point. So that's that kind of stuff isn't an issue because it's just because it works in a way so similar to a BitTorrent or torrent type client. People could sort of play it any way they wanted to.
So this is going to be a pretty strange question, but Node WebKit, I'm guessing, is a fork from WebKit proper. Are you just using that for the networking, or are you using that for the rendering too?
That's getting used for everything, actually. The rendering is done through WebGL, which is sort of an OpenGL subset that works with web technology to accelerate things using the same kind of drivers and stuff that accelerate big 3D games and that kind of stuff.
So it's an HTML5 game?
Yeah. Yeah, it's HTML5. There's not a lot. There's very little HTML5 in it. It's mostly JavaScript.
Okay.
But that runs fast enough on most machines these days to get pretty good performance. Believe it or not, my target machine is just a dual core i5. I think it's what it was. It basically I stuck together okay, what's a cheap machine? Okay, $300. Okay, so I have to make a good machine or make a game that can run on a $300 machine. So it's just a not great Windows 7 machine. It's only a dual core that's slower than most laptops that came out 2-3 years ago, and I still get pretty good performance. I still get 60 frames a second at 2560 by 1440. So that should run on most things. Those Intel chips are always a pain in the ass, though. Those Intel embedded GPUs have terrible fucking performance. It's it runs on that at 1280 by 720. It runs at 60 frames a second, but at 1920 by 1080, it gets a little. It slows down a bit, which I'm trying to solve. Because I feel like it should run on that too, but not a lot of games run on that kind of hardware either. So it's sort of a tough balance to find.
We have a question from the stream. Marco Antonio is actually asking the wrong question. He's asking, is it available right now on Steam? And the answer is no, it's not available anywhere because it's done. It's not done yet. It's still in development. But when it is finished, are you planning on putting it out on Steam? Or how your initial release is going to be on the PC through Windows? What are you planning on releasing it through? How can people get a hold of it?
People will be able to buy it direct, which is always the best way. It will be available on Steam. I'm trying to go about it not through Steam Greenlight. I'm trying to become, Valve has this application process to become an official publisher on Steam that's sort of separate from Greenlight. It's their more traditional route. So I'm trying to go that route and just self-publishing instead of through Steam Greenlight.
Because you don't have to be voted on by the community or whatever.
That doesn't feel like a huge concern. It's just I feel like it's easier to get noticed that way, going on as a publisher instead of through Greenlight. It makes you seem more important. So I'm just gonna try that and see if my blatant ploy for positive PR works.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Hold down the ship while I was gone.
We tried. I even asked a couple of questions from chat.
Good job! I'm so proud. Hi, everybody. So sorry I was late. I had a mommy crisis. So we're talking about Greenlight versus being a direct publisher. And I think that that's a really interesting topic, honestly, because I didn't really understand why one was more preferred than the other, or which one was seen to be as the more, I guess, professional route to go when trying to present a game.
In terms of professional, I don't know if there's a huge difference. I mean, there is a difference, but publicly, I don't know that there's really a huge difference in terms of the kind of attention that one game gets over the other. It's sort of all part of the same process. The benefit of being a publisher on there instead of going through Steam Greenlight is that it also opens up the opportunity to publish other developers' games, which isn't something you can do in the same way through Steam Greenlight. So if another developer came up and was having trouble getting through Greenlight, and I saw the game and said, "Hey, that looks cool. I can put that on Steam for you," that would be an option, going the more traditional route than through Greenlight.
I like that. I like that a lot. Are there games that you have watched struggle getting through Greenlight that you would have liked to have seen come up, that's something that maybe you possibly upvoted that didn't end up getting through the door?
Jeez, I vote on probably 24 Greenlight games every time I open Steam. So I can't really remember.
Good for you, though. Active participation.
I just sort of hope that something I clicked on that I would buy ends up being available for me to buy.
Mm-hmm.
If something really cool comes along that's not getting attention, I might I'll mention that on Twitter, or I'll mention that on Facebook page or whatever, or my long neglected Tumblr account that I probably haven't posted on in a year. Until recently, actually, I posted something saying, "Follow me on Twitter or go to my website," because I don't post on here that much anymore. I can't think of anything. There's a few that took longer to get through than I thought they would, but they all got through. And I think that's mostly, and I think they stick in my mind mostly because I knew the people working on them. So there was a couple, like, this is actually a good game, and this isn't me saying it because I'm friends with these people. Some of them I became friends with because they made good games, and I started talking to them at these various like indie events and stuff. Most of them probably that's how I met them. There's a few that took a while to get through, but they're all through now, which is pretty cool. If people are like Mega Man style game fans, they should check out a game called Rad Raygun. That's fun. And for full disclosure, I've known the guy who did the art for it for years. We used to work together when I lived in Texas. But it is a genuinely good game, and I think the original version came out on Xbox Live for like 99 cents or something like that, and then they got picked up by Midnight City, which is Majesco's sort of indie game label. I think they published Costume Quest 2, and they're publishing another game called Organic Panic. That's like another 4-player game. They're publishing some cool stuff, actually, those Midnight City guys. And I feel like there's some big game that if I said it, everyone would know what it is right away. And I'm forgetting the name of it because I'm just drawing a blank for some reason right now. That 2D Blood Rain game, they published that for PC, which is actually pretty good. I have to say, I got to give them credit for that. The Windows, or not the Windows, the Xbox 360 version was a little rough around the edges, but the PC port that's available on Steam, they did a really good job on. And they published a few other games that people would know about if they checked out their site. So they're doing cool stuff.
How good a deal is Steam for a developer? What's your revenue split like?
I don't think I'm allowed to say that.
Oh, okay. Really?
It's pretty reasonable though. I mean, it might be public. But I'm not sure if it is or not. So that's why I'm not.
Oh. Yeah, if you don't know, don't say it.
Yeah, I'm not. That might be something that is actually public. In fact, I'm going to look right now.
I know a lot of the people dealing with
Yeah, they're saying they don't discuss it publicly, so yeah, I can't. Sorry.
The
It's good.
iTunes,
It's good though. It's good though.
the iTunes App Store has a like 70/30. The developer gets, or the people who publish the movies, the music, whatever, the authors, they get 70% of the revenue, and then there's no fees for storage or downloads or things like that, and Apple takes their 30% cut.
Right.
Off the wrist. And I'm not asking you to compare it. I'm not going to ask you to do anything that leads you into bad areas of violating your NDA. Is that the reason why I'm asking this is because I was so intrigued by the fact that you're building a game around WebKit. I'm going to get a little bit nerdy, and this is nerdy outside my area of expertise, so if I'm stepping on people's area of knowledge, feel free to get angry in the chat. WebKit began life as KHTML. It was a web browser for the KDE environment that ran on top of Linux. And Apple took it, did some stuff with it because they were looking to make their own web browser. Internet Explorer was going to be stopped development on iOS. They'd never made a version for iOS, and they were going to stop supporting it at all. So they needed to make their own web browser, and they needed to make it quick. They took a look at a bunch of different options, including licensing, Gecko, and all these other ones. Finally took KHTML as an open source project, put it under their wing, made a bunch of changes, expanded it, re-released it, named it WebKit because that's the internal naming system on their OS. All their modules are called kits. And then it got picked up by Google to be the basis for Chrome. It got picked up by, and then when they made Android, it became the basis of the built-in Android browser. It got picked up by basically every mobile operating system in the world right now, except I think BlackBerry and Windows Mobile. They use some format, some version of WebKit. And that actually brings me to my question, which is this. Since your game is JavaScript running through Node WebKit, which I assume is a fork of the normal WebKit, is it possible that is it non-trivial to deploy it on like the iPhone, other than interface issues, or maybe Mac OS if it's running in the browser? I mean, or running in its own independent process that is a web browser that should be already native on the Mac OS. Is that a non-trivial task, or is that something you could do pretty easily?
When you say Mac OS, do you mean Mac OS or OS X?
OS 10. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It'll run on it. The release will be initially Windows, OS X, and Linux. It'll run on all three.
Oh,
it runs
okay.
on all three, and it runs on all three fine. There are definite performance issues with mobile stuff. I've run it on my phone just to see what happens, and it runs. Doesn't run well. There's a lot going on behind the scenes to do some of the graphical effects, and that phone graphics processors rarely aren't able to handle quite yet. Maybe next generation. But yeah, I mean technically it runs on pretty much everything that supports WebKit. And Node is sort of Node is a sort of JavaScript platform for dealing with network applications, and they have they do sort of standalone releases based on Chrome, or I think actually based on Chromium, which is I think JavaScript's runtime. That's Chromium, right? I may be mixing up my terms here. Chromium is
the unbranded open source version of Chrome.
Right. So, okay. So I was mixing up my things there. Yeah. So Node WebKit sort of works with Chromium, and yeah, it sort of works with Chromium. And Node is sort of not an offshoot of WebKit. It's sort of an add-on for it to deal with networking stuff. That's extremely powerful and runs on pretty much any platform.
So it's a JavaScript library to add networking to JavaScript programs running in JavaScript.
Well, it's a JavaScript runtime
Okay.
environment So it sort of runs the JavaScript itself. It's just that it's called Node.js because it's written in JS, in JavaScript, I guess. I would suggest reading up on it. It's pretty cool. There's a lot of interesting stuff going on there. It's going to make doing cross-platform application stuff really easy in the future.
See, and the biggest fall down of cross-platform applications is that whatever platform they're initially made for, they look fine there, but as soon as you start trying to run them on something else, usually it looks like shit because the controls look all wrong, the windows look all wrong, it just doesn't look like a native application. But if you're running a full-screen game where the only Chrome is all custom because it's the interface you built for your game, you don't have to worry about that. It looks exactly like the way you want it to all the time, and that's just darn cool.
Yeah, well, the benefit of using web technology too is the ease of making sure that it looks the same on all platforms, because everything interface-wise can just be written in CSS. So even if I wanted to, you could, in theory, make a really basic web browser out of Chromium if you wanted to, and out of Node WebKit. You just sort of add a field that takes a URL and then retrieves that URL, and then everything else would work the way it works in Chrome. But any interface stuff you wanted to do, if you're using CSS to do it, you can either do a custom interface like you would do for a game that would look the same across all platforms because it's not matching the basic interface of the operating system anyway. Is that if you wanted it to look like the existing operating system, you could do that too because it's just HTML5, JavaScript, and CSS. So if you just told it you wanted a slider, it would use the default system slider like the way a normal web browser would. So you could build native-looking apps pretty simply in it, and they'd be pretty quick too.
Sorry, I'm going to vent for just a second.
Go ahead.
My least favorite cross-platform application is the Adobe Creative Suite. I hate it. I hate it with a passion. I had to format and reinstall my hard drive a couple months ago, and I'm still getting back around to putting stuff back into place because it's just a long process to migrate everything I need to migrate. But I was just not going to install Java, not JavaScript, full Java, because it's a big security risk, and there wasn't anything I ran that I needed it for. And then I go to launch Photoshop, and it says, oh, I'm sorry, you need to run Java in order to use Photoshop and all of their Creative Suite programs. And I was so mad because I could not believe that a major publisher had put large pieces of their code, and they've got their own little interface style that's just kind of ugly. It's not really bad ugly, it's just kind of moderately ugly. I just couldn't believe that they would force you to install Java, which is the single largest, well, second to Flash. It's the largest vulnerability in web browsing today. If you're going to catch some kind of malware, drive-by download or whatever, it's going to happen through Java. So not having that installed makes you many times safer when you're online. And having to install it just to run my Creative Suite programs just really chapped my hide. On the other hand, they did take very well to being put back on the same computer, even though I had erased the hard drive. They haven't given me any heartache with registration or anything, and I'd heard nightmares about that, so that went well, so I guess I'm happy with that. But cross-platform programs mostly just look like ass, and Adobe certainly proves that. Okay, rant's over. I'm done.
No, I get it. I have to deal with Photoshop all day, every day, so I think I'm just sort of used to it, and my response to that, to your rant, is basically, well, better the devil you know. And I think people that get the whole Creative Suite too, I mean, just the Creative Suite by itself without without Java is something like 10 gigs, I think. So I think if they're figuring, well, if they just installed 10 gigs worth of apps, what's another 400 megabytes for Java? And that's not a defense of that either. And I wonder what they use. Like, I wonder why they force you to install Java, because you can write scripts for a lot of the Adobe Creative Suite programs in Java. So I guess they probably wanted it there because they were using it as an external executable for those scripts. But if you're not going to do that kind of stuff, it would be nice not to have that forced on you.
They have an app they install that's like their glue program that handles messaging and switching components, common shared components between all the different Creative Suite applications.
Yes.
That app is almost entirely Java.
That's probably there you go. That's a big chunk of it too, and that's probably a legacy issue then too, because I don't think these days they would write it in Java.
Okay, that's my geeky. Man, I've done 2 geeky, big, thick geeky things today. That's more than I usually allow myself. Okay, so Marco asked in the chat, were there any plans of releasing it on a mobile platform? We already covered that. You're talking about how right now, with the current generation of mobile hardware, the GPU isn't up to snuff when it's executing WebGL code, and so we're waiting for faster chips, maybe more RAM, because RAM is really highly constrained on any iOS device. That's the one big annoyance for me. Which is why they're so aggressive about shutting down programs in the background and telling programmers, be ready for us to kill your process at any time, no matter what. Don't ever assume you're going to be running because we will kill you without even blinking. JT Vega made a response, OpenGL, so it could be played on the PS3 and 4. That's not actually a question, it's just a statement, but is that correct, or
well, it's half correct. He's right that the framework is there to run it, but because it's not using OpenGL directly, because it's using WebGL, Sony needs to add support for applications to be able to access WebGL specific features. Now the interesting thing is that the PS4 interface is actually HTML5 and WebGL. And it actually runs in a very similar way to the way that Sombrero does. But Sony hasn't released the ability to, at least not to smaller developers that I'm aware of, has not released a way to access the WebGL HTML5 specific stuff in an application like that quite yet. So it's running the system interface, but it's not accessible to third-party developers, as far as I know. Been looked into. I've emailed Sony about it. I've bugged people I know that know people at Sony about it, but they haven't really had any kind of public response on that as of yet. But yeah, they do support OpenGL, and technically there's no reason it shouldn't be able to run on an Xbox One either. The processing power is there, the technology is there. You can already run HTML5 based games in the browser on the Xbox One and PS4. But to get the kind of performance I'm trying to get, you need to use some of the OpenGL stuff. So as soon as that's available, I'll get it on any console I can get it on. Because it shouldn't be a big port, because this technology already runs on all of these machines.
Okay, I'm going to step back. Let's see if Dorrinal or Remy, if either of you guys have any questions. No?
I am here. I was going to let him go first. I was trying to be polite because I know I don't really talk a whole ton.
Go ahead.
Okay. I guess I have no idea what got covered at the beginning, so forgive me if I kind of go back over already covered material. But talking about the creative process and the actual creation of a game and the different platforms you want to make it available on and everything else, do you decide this is the game that I want to make and then think of the platform secondary, or is it sort of at the same time as part of the creation process? Are you constantly thinking, well, this will fit on this platform and this will fit on the other one better, or do you kind of get a more solid idea of what your game is going to be first and then decide what it'll fit?
That's a good question. It's a little bit of back and forth, I think. Like with Sombrero actually started out as a completely different game that was a top-down sort of commando kind of game. Remember Commando or Gunsmoke or Akari Warriors, those sort of old school overhead arcade games. Sort of shoot 'em up, but on the ground. And that was I was gonna do. Okay, well I can make this run on my computer. I can make this run run as a mobile app, pretty easily.
They call those dual stick shooters.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of dual stick shooters. So there's going to be a lot of that kind of control in a lot of the games I work on. Even Sombrero kind of controls that way because you use the analog sticks to move around and shoot in a direction, even though it's a side view platformer. But yeah, so that I kind of started off, with the idea that okay, I wanted to run on a lot of things, and so I did that, and I got that working. Touchscreen controls are a pain in the butt to implement well, as what I learned from that experience for a faster paced game. And so that was a sort of like an offshoot idea of something I was messing around with, and then when I decided that hey, maybe this isn't really what I want to do. It's sort of I wanted to try something multiplayer. I've never made a multiplayer game before, so I thought that'd be kind of interesting, and so for that I decided just to make my life easier because I was doing so much of it myself, like 90% of it myself, that I would just pick the easiest platforms to get it out on initially, which would be desktop computers and laptops. Pretty much everyone has one. In terms of the indie scene, it's pretty thriving these days. Especially on Steam. There's a lot of stuff that gets buried on there, but if you sort of just put a little bit of effort into letting people know about it, it's not that hard to at least break even. At least it doesn't seem to be to me. So that's why it's initially coming out for Mac PC, Linux, because those are the three easy ways to get on Steam on multiple platforms. The console stuff I kind of want to do because that's probably where there's I shouldn't say a bigger market for it, but it's a bigger market where less people in that market are likely to want to buy it. But
it makes sense, right? I mean, the people who want to play it on their couch, they're not playing their PC on their couch. They're playing their Xbox on the couch. And this, Sombrero has the look of like a very couch co-op game.
Yeah. So my approach is going to be similar to what they did with was it Samurai Gun, where they did an initial PC release and then ported it over to platforms. Because a PC release is a good way to work all the bugs out, more than anything, to be honest. I send it to people to test, and they have hundreds of different kinds of gamepads that I can't afford to go buy one of every single gamepad out there to test it. So that gets feedback from that, and so I think doing a PC release, you end up with a more polished game, and then when you port it over to a platform, it's a polished game for that platform too, because you spent the time polishing it on this whole range of hardware and different control schemes, and then when you go to a console, it's like, well, this only has to work with one thing. So console ports are pretty easy, but I feel like something coming to PC first is a good way to make sure it's polished, it's buttoned up, it makes sense to a larger range of people than consoles.
So okay, Halo started life as basically a myth. Excuse me. It was a strategy game. You controlled armies that fought each other, and through development it became a first-person shooter, and then was bought by Microsoft and became the first really, really big console first-person shooter after James Bond. But So your game went through not a similar path, but a similar process of starting out as one thing and then changing gradually to something else. What is it that, why is it that that whole, whatever pressures were on you to make the game better and better pushed you in that direction? What is it that actually happened to make you want to react and make it into this kind of game versus what you started with?
Well, what I started with was sort of a straight up, 16-bit pixel art overhead sort of action game. Clearly styled after those kind of arcade games I mentioned earlier, the Ikari Warriors, the Gunsmokes, that kind of stuff. And after I got the first stage done, art-wise and gameplay-wise, I just sort of looked at it and was like, there's just nothing special about this. This is everyone's played this game before. At least everyone my age has played this game before, and we've played it 1,000 times because we remember arcades. So that's what happened there. And when I say that became Sombrero, it wasn't even a gradual change. It was I hit a point where I was like, okay, here's my vertical slice of gameplay. It's polished, it's fun, it looks decent, but I'm bored by it. There's nothing new here that's challenging or would be interesting to any people. Post-apocalyptic sci-fi overhead shooter. There's been a million of those. I didn't want to make it 1,000,001. So I decided to shift it over to something completely different. And this is actually, Sombrero is an idea that I had years before I was doing that. I was sitting at my desk at work and like doodling these little Western characters on Post-it notes to kill some time, and I still had those Post-it notes and sort of digging through them, and it's like, aha, this is what I'm going to make. I'm going to make this weird cartoony spaghetti Western themed competitive multiplayer platformer. That's what I'm going to do. It just sort of all sprang into my head. Running across those Post-it notes, because that's what they had initially been for. I had been thinking about that idea, but had like forgotten about it, and then the Tower Falls came out, and then the Samurai Gun came out. Now there's a whole bunch of 4-player games coming out, most of which actually look really good, and I'm really impressed by. There's a local guy, I can't remember his name, but the game he's making is called Skyhook. That's a lot of fun. The whole game is basically based around the mechanic of the 2D. Bionic Commando kind of arm swing fun, and people should check it out. And I don't know them at all, so there's definitely no bias in my saying that. But yeah, I just wanted to do something different and something that looked different too. There's so many pixel art games out there now. Partially because it's easy, and partially because it's easy to create with software that doesn't perform very well. So if it's just running at a really low resolution, that makes it run great on everything. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. So let's try to do some like high-res art that looks more like a cartoon. Each stage has its own title card styled after, sort of Warner Brothers old cartoons. They had the title cards before the cartoon started, or and the look is a little bit of that, a little bit of Samurai Jack with the sort of bright flat colors and a little bit of texture laid in. So I don't see a lot of stuff that looks like that. So I thought, well, that would be something that's fun to do. It's a kind of game people are now more familiar with, and like Smash Brothers is super popular these days, so people are used to this sort of couch multiplayer kind of idea now. So let's try something, along those lines that can be a little bit different, and that's what I ended up doing. And so it's the code base. It's basically the exact same code base with that other game. It's loading in these tiles, and using the gamepad makes you run around and shoot things. And I just made it a 2D view instead of an overhead view.
Can I say, I love the part where what did you say, run around and shoot things? Big fan of that.
Yeah, that's always the most fun to get working too, because you shoot things and then that thing explodes and it's and then you make the rest of the game and you try to make there a good reason to be making things explode. Picking a Western thing is an easy thing to pick the motivations for, right? Every spaghetti Western for more or less, is either about revenge or money. So those are easy topics that work in games too. So it was it all ended up coming together pretty quickly. The initial stuff, and since I've been working on it, it's mostly been polishing, and tweaking controls, tweaking art. It started off the first time I showed it, there was 4 characters in one stage, and now there's 2.5 stages. Third one's almost done. But when I say almost done, I mean like laid out, tested. What I tend to do is I sketch everything, and like I'll sketch the tiles that will make up the levels, and then I sketch them in Photoshop with a tablet, I should say, not with pencil. And I just use those to get the level layouts, and then I go in and do like the actual polished art. So like it's all laid out. I have to do the polished art, and then it'll be 3 stages, and that one's a little bit more sort of a weird Aztec, Mayan, and UFO themed one, because that mixing those things together is fun. And according to the History Channel, the aliens built the pyramids in Mexico anyway, so that's sort of a fun thing to poke fun at too. Just little references like that. And I like sci-fi from the 50s too, so that's sort of sneaking in a little bit.
You were talking about polishing, and I don't know if this is the same for you, but this is just the way it is for me. When I do some, good, hard, long bit of polishing on the game, the only thing it does is make me feel unhappy, because it just reveals the other parts of it that also need to be polished. When you've got big problems in front of you, as soon as you remove that big problem, it just allows you to see all those little problems that it's been hiding that you didn't notice before, and you're like, oh, jeez, I gotta do this again.
Yeah, that's just life, though. Really, that's just life. But yeah, no, it can get frustrating. I agree. I've had that. It's good though when it happens. It's frustrating initially, then it's like, well, now I can make this better.
And
I can make this not broken, but looking like it's working.
You have to keep in mind, at least I have to keep reminding myself that, yes, you actually did something that was, that's the only reason you can see this other problem is because you actually achieved something. You can't just because other things look bad doesn't mean you can throw away the fact that you actually made progress. That's the way to discourage yourself out of finishing, is to forget that you're making any progress at all, because you are making progress even though it doesn't necessarily seem like it all the time.
Right, exactly. Yeah, take the positive in that situation. Yeah, don't think about all this other stuff you have to do. Enjoy the little victories.
What gameplay role does the money serve?
In the videos, that's what I've been showing off. That's sort of calling it loot mode right now until I think of a better name.
Okay.
And so whoever gets the most money in the round wins that round. And the little campfires around there that you can see in the video that you stand in front of, they change color after about half a second when someone's standing in front of them. And that lets them capture them sort of as like a checkpoint. And they all provide score multipliers. So the more campfires you get, the more the money bags you pick up is worth. And there'll be a standard deathmatch and all that kind of stuff too. This is the one I've been trying to polish the most, because getting capture the flag and standard deathmatch in there is easy. Trying to do something that's a little bit different is harder to get the balance right. Or at least I'm having a harder time with it. I don't know if it's actually harder.
Because you're doing everything from scratch. It's not. Death matches and capture the flag have been traditional modes for decades, so they are well-trod development areas. You can go and look what other people have done and implement it well your way in the language of your game and your game's mechanics. But if you're genuinely doing something new and different, then you don't have that experience, you don't have that language, you don't have that common set of known mechanics that players will come to the game with and already understand it. So you have to make sure you've got the language of your game and its rules and how it works, and then you have to use it in a new and interesting way in your game mode, and then you have to teach players how to do that, and that's just a lot more complicated, but that adds the novelty that players are going to fall in love with.
Hopefully. I hope that's what happens. That'd be cool. That's the goal. That's definitely the end goal. And it's getting there. It's getting there. It's I'm almost happy with the how the loot mode stuff works. I still need to get the power ups working the way I want them to work. Cause I want to get in some just some simple power ups. You know, the double jump, maybe a wall jump. I think there'll be a few different weapons, a shotgun, maybe a rifle that shoots farther. I'm trying to think of some off the wall weapon that still fits the theme, but I've been having a hard time.
The blue shell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there needs to be a blue shell because that just adds the right kind of frustration to a competitive game, I think. So I haven't found it. That's my white whale right now in terms of the power ups is finding the blue shell. But then after that, like I said, adding in. After that, it's really all content generation. You know, I want to make sure there's 5 or 6 stages in there upon release. That'll probably be 3 or 4 stages for 4-player, and then a couple stages that are geared more towards less players. Just because there's probably not a ton. I recognize there's not a ton of people out there that have 4 gamepads for their computer, and so until I get it on consoles where that's a bit more common, I need to make sure that there's a decent amount of gameplay in there for people who maybe only have 1 or 2 gamepads too. But yeah, content creation. Once capture the flag is. We all know what capture the flag is. It's not especially complicated. And deathmatch is basically just stripping features away. People can already shoot and kill each other. So it's basically just leaving that turned on and turning every other feature off. And there's deathmatch. And then of course the joy of having to build the GUIs for all that stuff, which even though I mentioned earlier people need to do it, I'm just dreading doing because I just do not like building interfaces. It's not fun at all to do that, but it has to be done. And then once that's in there, the deathmatch screens and capture the flag screens. And I want to try and get another mode in there that's another one I need a name for, sort of the opposite of tag, I guess is a good way to refer to it. So there'll be 1 bag of money, and you have to chase the person holding the bag of money, and then steal the bag of money from them, and whoever holds that 1 bag the longest will win. There's a name for it. I can't. I don't know what it is. I feel like it's a real life game that I've heard before.
I can tell you the name, and I can tell you why nobody in the development community ever uses it. The game is called Smear the Queer.
That is not the name I remembered.
That's the dodgeball game where you could throw the ball at the person who had picked it up. Bungie, when they made Marathon, called it "Kill the Guy with the Ball."
Yeah, that's what I remember. Growing up, I think it was "Kill the Man with the Ball." That's what I remember. So maybe that was something that changed by region.
That's mine too. Yeah.
I can understand why no developer in the world would ever want to use that name, because you're going to instantly offend pretty much everyone by using it. In fact, I probably just offended people by quoting a name that I am not suggesting you use. I probably just offended a ton of people. Okay, we have got literally...
Realistically, too, though, it's it meant something different at the time. Everyone understands it's not okay to say now. And that's why nobody says it. But I don't like saying "kill the man with the ball" either, because that's not what I don't want it to sound like that. It needs to be something.
Isn't it kill the person with the ball now? Isn't that how it is?
It may be.
Well,
I don't.
You can also call it muckle. Muckle is like the.
Muckle?
Yeah, muckle is the regional term for it.
Like MUCKLE.
Yeah, because you're muckling the man with the ball. It's the same thing. But yeah, and they mean queer as odd, not as in gay. But yeah, it's a British game.
Oh wow! I looked it up, and that's actually a thing. I'm like, she's making this up. Actually,
that's strange.
That's not a real word. But of
Totally
course it is. It's British, and they have funny names for things.
Oh, call it posse or outlaw, depending on which one, because the person who has the ball is the outlaw and everybody else is the posse. Sorry, bad.
I'm going to steal that. That's good. I'll give you credit in the game. That's good. That's the right kind of simple and very explanatory as to what you do. So it's perfect.
Well, cool. All right.
Yeah.
Last minute before we have to go.
Okay.
Any closing things you want to say?
Me?
Yeah.
Sure. It was fun talking to you guys, and I hope people enjoyed listening. And they're welcome to go to pixelmetal.com to check out Sombrero. Follow me on Twitter at pixelmetal.
Dorrinal, anything to say before we go?
Hey, thanks for listening. It was fun. Good talking to you. Looking forward to that game.
Thank you. Yeah, and it was fun talking to you guys too.
And our silent partner, Remy.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry I couldn't talk too much, guys. My landlord, most people who follow me on Twitter understand when I say my landlord, but my landlord is causing chaos, and you guys don't have to hear that stuff, so I've been muted for most of it. I thank you so much for coming on, though, Nick. Like, I'm super excited about your game, and this is super cool for me.
Well, thank you.
All right.
It was fun. I enjoyed doing this. And
Very
I like
much,
that. I want to give something away, though, because I thought it was really funny when we first started, and we weren't quite on the air yet. Daddy Warpig does not sound like Daddy Warpig when he's not doing the show, and I was really surprised by that. In fact, I wasn't sure I was talking to the right person, and then as soon as you kicked into show mode, I was like, yeah, that's him. This is this guy. That was good. You have a good radio voice.
Oh, thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in and listening. Thanks, everybody, for coming on the show. We very much appreciate Pixel Metal taking an hour out of his busy day to come and talk to us here at Geek Gab. This has been Geek Gab, the Geek-tastic Gab Fest, every Sunday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. 1 hour of all play, no work, nothing serious. Give you a chance to rest from the week behind and get ready for the week to come. Anything geeky goes. We will be lining up, no doubt, awesome special guests for next week. So awesome that I can't tell you right now who it is going to be. That's my story, and I am sticking to it. Thank you for tuning in. You can catch me, your host, at the House of Geekery, daddywarpig.com, daddywarpig.com. You can also catch RemipunX on her Let's Play hitbox.tv/RemipunX. And, of course, all of us are on Twitter. The links are in the description. Thank you for tuning in. We will see you again in 1 week's time. Me, your host, and my co-hosts are signing off. We will be back.